here. And as I was saying to Raina, it's amazing the small things that make the day feel better. But this is my first day in this week of fine weather. So well done, Wellington. I can assure you, yesterday in Tauranga it was miserable. So that is the weather, not the people or the job. It's great to be back here in fine weather, so it's tremendous. Would you folk join me, please, in opening the meeting with the karakia? Whakataki te hou ki te uru, whakataka te hou ki te tonga, kia mā ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai, e he ake ura, he tio, he huka, he hahu, ora. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. That's our last quarterly meeting for the triennium. We as you'll know, meet twice next week, but this is the last quarterly meeting. So before we get to the end of it, I just want to express firstly my thanks to my colleagues for the support and the work that you've put in over the course of the 3 years. And Raina, to your team, and obviously the SLT, etc., that we've got here in one piece, which is great, and a good set of papers yet again today to deal with, which is really, really important. So I'm very grateful, but isn't it amazing how quickly time flies? Although that might be more about my age than yours. Okay, we have apologies. Liz is not with us right at this moment. She may not be with us for the meeting, and if she is, it will be online. So the suggestion is we just sustain her apology for this meeting. I don't have any other absences, I don't think. I am committed to having the meeting done this morning. Okay, so hopefully you guys can be here for the rest of the day. I'll move that we sustain Liz's apology. Have a seconder, please. Thank you, Rebecca. Put the motion all those pressure buttons. Where are we? This is Wellington. Let's go. And Liz obviously can't vote for her own motion. Brilliant. It's carried. Thank you very much. So look, just as we get into it, sorry, just one matter procedurally. We are just going to change the order slightly. What I propose to do is that we deal with the insurance update, the insurance update, then we'll deal with the assurance update, and then we will bring forward the public excluded session so that we can have time with our internal auditor committee alone. Just trying to make certain we pick up good practice, which is that we have some time with our internal auditor by, in this case, themselves. So that will occur then, and that's just, to be honest, a matter of convenience for Murray, but it's important. Then we will go back into open business and deal with the remaining two items, which is health and safety and the decision register updates. If that's okay, that's what I propose to do. Are there any matters coming up that you need to note your interest for? I don't presume that would be the case. We have the minutes of our last meeting. I'm going to move from the chair. We take them as true and correct. I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Tori. Are there any matters in those minutes that we need to note for correction or alteration? That being the case, let's just take the remotes, please, and vote for the motion. Thinking, Tony? Thank you. It's carried. Appreciate that. There aren't any items to bring forward that are not on the agenda, and I've had no request, Tisha, for public participation. So if we go straight to the insurance update, I suspect there are one or two down there. Andy, Sarah, welcome to the meeting. I think we may have Matt online. Is that right, Andy? From Aon as well. So that's tremendous to have here as well, Matt. Welcome to the meeting too. Going to see his face, perhaps? Wonderful. Anyway, in short, this is a really significant paper, actually. It took a bit of time to get through it, to be honest, Sarah, a bit of homework. So we're in your hands, please.
Excellent. Yes, I think we're excited about it, Bruce. So, but we're unique individuals down this end, I think. So yes, thank you for having us again today. We have drafted up our usual quarterly update. I just wanted to bring your attention just one more time to the really amazing results we've had this year. So the 31 May renewals obviously is when we do our large material damage policies, the three big ones, and we saw significant savings from a rate online perspective. We had an amazing new broker team in London that worked with us to get really, really good, efficient results. And we picked up an extra $250 million of cover with zero ventilation through the above-ground portfolio. We deployed that capacity on that policy because the housing one is sort of fully covered. We picked up a little bit of extra capacity there last year, but there's no ventilation there. And then we didn't want to predetermine any outcomes for the new water entity by significantly increasing the cover on the below ground assets. So that was sort of the decision-making process around that. On a net basis, when everybody sort of loves talking about our insurance gap, we managed to, it's not a like for like, so the 250 didn't just go into the gap because we had asset valuation uplifts and things like that that sort of crowded a bit of that out. And then just in the last month or so, we've had the outcome of the waterfront policy as well. And not covered in here because we were specifically focusing on the 31 May, but just a verbal update on that. We got full coverage on what we sought there, plus some extra capacity. So once again, no valuation uplift in that. So that was pure extra capacity on that one. But yeah, like I say, net outcome of this year's activities to date, we've closed the gap by about $100 million when it's all sort of said and done. So I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's small incremental steps is what we're aiming for. So I'll cover off a few market conditions as well. Obviously, we have faced 7-8 years of very strong insurance increases, both locally and offshore in the London markets, a little bit in Singapore as well. But essentially, we are seeing a levelling off of those big increases at a corporate level from the London market. I know that that's not necessarily translating through to households just yet, but we have hope that we can kind of help to influence that. But we're not likely to see a deteriorate or a big drop off the other side. It's not sort of the interest rate example of going up the elevator and dropping off the cliff. It sort of never quite comes back again. But we do see cycles in the insurance market, so we'll soften for a bit. It will likely harden again depending on global events. And look, we've seen 7 years, isn't it, of excess of $100 billion claims across the world. So that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. There's a typhoon going on right now that could be another significant market-moving event, depending on where it sort of lands and where its trail goes. So just a really high level insurance remains difficult to get, and we remain a seismically active part of the world, so that's the lens through which insurers look at us. So the captive, that's what everyone's here for today, as you would.
Sarah, could I just jump in there?
Please do.
I mean, because I appreciate the captive is probably the big issue, but you quite rightly, and thank you, gave us an update on the current renewal. Is there any questions?
Sure.
Iona.
Thanks. I do have a few, so maybe I'll just do three.
Can we make sure we leave the captive?
Yeah. That's. So first of all, thank you so much for this is such important work. So really grateful that you're being proactive about it. So the first question is around individuals and businesses. So as I have told you, my 40% increase in premiums almost set me into a tailspin, and other people are suffering too. So once you've gone through stage 2, is it going to be possible to start thinking about avenues for households and businesses? or small businesses maybe, not the big ones.
So the captive by its nature, sorry, we said we weren't getting there, but I'll just bring in this one data point. By its nature, if it's set up in accordance with how the legislation is, we actually can't extend coverage from that vehicle to anyone else apart from us, because otherwise we become an insurance company, and that's not the business we're looking to get into. Look, the long and the short of it is we've got one eye to that. We have our ratepayers. We note that they are doing it tough from many angles. This is not directly relevant to this conversation, but you're aware of the Ratepayers Assistance Scheme that we're also working through to help with some of those affordability things. There's no contemplation of insurance through that because it's not a local government product, but there is contemplation of hoping to help with other household expenses. One of the products being a property improvement loan that will help make housing or housing units more resilient, and by extension, if you have a more resilient house with seismic is our issue, but others will be, there'll be different problem definitions, then that should directly tie into how your insurance is assessed over your household. So it's not a direct line, but there are avenues where we're exploring some of these affordability issues.
Okay. Thank you. Yep. So the leaky buildings, I was just interested in your comment at, maybe it's sort of getting into the captive again, but paragraph 35, that we are the last entity standing. Is that really realistic that it would be able to cover significant costs like that?
So that's a good example of insurance retreat, right? So originally that wasn't contemplated and it wasn't seen. So insurers initially covered it, right? But then as years went by and we renewed, those issues were specifically carved out of the next year's insurance and the next and the next. So these are examples of insurance retreat or uninsurable risks. As they become known, you can no longer, there are certain lines that you can therefore no longer insure against. So pandemic is another example. You can't buy pandemic insurance, as far as I know, at the moment, because that's just completely gone because of recent history. So these are products that, and it will be part of phase 2 that we can kind of answer that more fulsomely, but those are products as examples of where we could fill a void in the insurance market.
And just the last question, I mean, it does go into the paper again around climate. Yep, earthquake is a big risk, but that's the other one, which will be bigger. So I'm just curious that there's still that focus on earthquakes.
A little bit about the work you're doing in the climate modelling.
Yeah. So while we obviously do concentrate on earthquakes, they're a really known large risk. We do also know that climate change is coming for us. So with our climate change team, we've progressed some modelling and supplied some data. We're starting to get some good results out of that. And that will help to guide some work that the climate change team will lead. And that work will focus on community resilience and the things that the council can put in place to increase the resilience of the city as a whole to the impacts that we expect to see.
Thank you for that, Iona. Tim.
Thanks. Just actually a couple of questions. One is, you say that the gap is decreased because you've increased the cover by 250 million, but I thought that our rate of capital spending plus rising construction costs would have actually meant that the value of the assets which were insured have actually risen significantly more than 250 million?
So that's the point I was trying. We've got a little calculation that we could probably share with you after, just as a high level ins and outs of all of the activity that we've done to date, and shows the rise in the valuation of the assets that we have revalued to this year.
So doesn't the gap increased?
The gap has increased, and then we've closed it down with the additional cover that we've purchased. So it's a...
No, just so I've got this straight, you've bought another 250 million of cover. That's good. But my back of the envelope would have indicated that the value of the assets would have risen substantially more than 250 million.
We can show you the numbers of what we've got out of our valuation work that we've done this year. We don't value each asset every year; they're on a cycle. So we will record the valuations that we get done by an external party, and that's what we will apply the uplift to. So we don't really do back of the envelope.
Right, no, but I mean, when you look at the sludge minimisation facility now, 500 million.
So that hasn't come online. That won't come online until it's fully commissioned and it's handed over as a...
But who's taking the who's taking?
So that will go over to the new water entity when the asset transfers into that entity when it's complete and commissioned.
So that comes to another question for me, is that the Crown provides free cover for 60% of the value of below ground assets. Mm-hmm. Do we know if that cover will extend to Metro Water? It does.
So that the DIA has made assertions that while they are reviewing that policy setting, that will be made available to the new water entities as they are stood up. So that will transfer across to them.
Right, and just at a rough level, so roughly what is our insurance cover costing and what is the insured amount? I'm just trying to get a sense of the percentage fee.
Yep. So we currently have just over $1.1 billion in cover total, and that's cost us about $23 million.
That's what we've got. That's the new one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
That's right.
And one suggestion, which isn't going to affect me, but I do feel that you should get in Martin Harrington to explain how Wellington Airport uses its captive.
Yep.
Because I feel that the councillors who are going to be around this table would benefit an enormously large amount from hearing directly from the horse's mouth about how the airport goes about it, because it was obviously generated huge cost savings and value benefits, as well as, of course, they've built up the fund.
Absolutely, and that'll be part of. Sorry, Bruce, we're now jumping into captive again, but that will form part of the feasibility stage 2. Andy and I have made many new friends talking about captives over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, right out to the Gold Coast City Council, which is the closest council that we can identify that has a captive insurance. Centreport, Transpower, like I say, we've got lots and lots of friends, and at the appropriate time we will bring them in and give some of their anecdotal evidence of what they've observed, right from a brand new captive to probably a captive that's just been re-onshored, that is sort of eroding some of the benefits. So absolutely, when the time is right, we'll bring all the friends you like.
I mean, you don't want to overload these guys, so they can only cope so much.
No, but we've got some really good, great little case studies of where they can demonstrate the value for us.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Is there any other questions? Thank you. So look, we'll deal with the placement part. It just seems like the trifecta. You've increased the cover, you've reduced the premium, and you've closed the gap. That seems like a hang of a good result as a point in time.
Yeah.
So I think that's what wise then to move into the captive and that part of the paper which deals with looking at phase 1, moving us to phase 2.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Bruce. We do have Matt Bilderbeck online. Give us a wave, Matt. So I will get Matt to answer any tricky analytical questions that Tim might have. And obviously I've got Andy here with me as well, who's sort of very much rolled up his sleeves and done lots of the heavy lifting on this. So essentially we commissioned a report earlier this year. Yes, it has taken a while for us to get here, but that was done somewhat purposefully because we wanted the most up-to-date information as input from the long-term plan amendment. So that was the catalyst, I guess, for us to be able to bring this report back to you. So it was phased purposefully because that looked like a real reset in our financial settings, potentially. So the outcome of the phase 1 report, we were seeking to confirm how, our feeling, if that makes sense, that a captive does make sense from a financial perspective, and it has many benefits or potential benefits for council as we are here and now. I guess if I'm making a couple of just concluding remarks out of it, and then I'll let Andy and Matt flesh out anything that they wish to, is the soft market that I just sort of talked about in that update is a tricky time to be doing a financial analysis or something to prove up the problem for which we want to provide the solution. So the analysis says from a financial perspective, we would definitely benefit from a small captive, and by small we mean capitalised to between sort of 60 and $70 million. So over time, not on day one, but over time, that's kind of the target size that we would look look for. And in a soft market, very good time to set it up, but the numbers don't stack up as well as they would when we're really struggling to get insurance and it's really costly. So you want to, I think Geordie put it like this before, you want to set something up now for the hard times as they come through. It covers off risk tolerance and risk appetite and bits and pieces that I'm sure you'll appreciate, Bruce, just to work out what that sum is or could be or should be, looking at our financial metrics, how it may or may not disrupt our covenants and those other financial settings that we set through the long-term plan. Yes, so our recommendation, based on the report, is that can we please go ahead and do phase 2 so that we can look at the more in-depth detail about some of these things we've touched on but actually aren't answered in this report. So, like I say, happy to take any questions or anything.
Firstly, any comments from Andy or Matt?
Yeah.
Perhaps you first, Andy, and then I'll invite Matt to talk to us.
No, thank you, Bruce. I think the main thing to take away from this is that the study does show that Wellington City Council can feasibly think about having a captive and would be able to financially deal with the implications of that. I think that's the main thing that we get out of this report.
Brilliant. Matt, is there anything you'd like to add at this stage?
Not much more, Bruce. Just to, I guess the risk tolerance analysis indicates that council has some flexibility here to implement an alternative solution like a captive, and the market timing is really the best timing to make strategic moves for the long term.
Brilliant. Okay, folks, so we'll leave it open to questions. The proposition is that we're satisfied with the results that have come out of phase 1, and we're being asked to enable staff to move forward with phase 2. Okay, probably, Sarah, it would be good just to explain exactly what you do in phase 2, please, because I think it actually helps to understanding why we should move on.
Yeah, so can I just make one more point? We have brought this to you in draft purposefully, just if there's anything that any of our elected members want to feed back into this, Matt, I'm looking at you to nod, that we can then sort of just fold that into the...
Brilliant. That was why I was going to be my first question, Sarah. Why is it still draft?
Yeah. So yes, it is still in draft. We haven't finalised because we wanted you to interact with it first.
So my question was, we are at phase 1. What would happen under phase 2? And then Iona's got the floor.
So I can read it from our insurance roadmap if that makes sense. So the captive feasibility study phase 2 looks at the regulatory domicile review, where in the world you would put it. It gives a 5-year financial projections, captive management structure, controls and supervision, and indicative time for setup. That's what it will recommend. It doesn't do that, but it recommends what those optimal items are.
The thing that I was interested in was actually ultimately how does this all roll together in terms of numbers? That might be the accountant in me, but that'll be essentially coming out of phase 2. So this is to really get to the final, well, it's more than the concept. It's the more sort of the provisional look at what a captive would actually look like.
And those 5-year financial projections will definitely give that to you.
Thank you. Iona.
Again, thank you very much for this. Since you suggested this and acknowledging that some limitations have been put on and the report says that you need to look at other mechanisms, are there any downsides to this?
I'm not sure if it's a downside as such, but it's a constraint, and whether it's a practical one or otherwise. The current legislation in New Zealand means that domiciling it here is not, you won't get good outcomes from this because it's at the mercy or whatever you want to call it. It's captured under the prudential settings for big, widely used insurance companies. So the big insurance companies have the same set of rules that we would have to comply with from a regulatory, prudential and a capitalisation perspective. So we're trying to advocate to see if that law can be changed, but it has just happened in the UK. They've consulted and they have agreed to carve out the captives from their prudential settings. Whether we can influence that or not, I don't know, but it's that whole domiciled offshore piece that we see as the biggest hurdle to doing this. I might look to Matt because he would have more experience in these downsides to setting up captives. Matt?
Well, I guess the point is you may achieve some savings, but that comes at retaining higher volatility. So while the captive is being capitalised, there exists the risk of a large event, which would be obviously a downside to the decision. But the setup is designed so that that increased volatility that you're retaining sits within the risk tolerance. So that should be something that council can absorb without major rate increases or things like that.
I understand there's also mechanisms whereby you can offset that risk within the captive by buying reinsurance, Matt, as you're growing that capital, so that you're not entirely taking all of that risk on yourself. You're nodding, yeah, okay.
And maybe it's a question for you, Matt, just around the thinking of insurers around climate change. Because I may have said this before, but I think it's worthwhile repeating. I remember someone telling me many years ago that the insurers are the best friend of the climate activist, right? Because insurers knew that and accepted that climate change was happening many years ago. So where we knew that we could have taken an alternative route, are we still going to be able to actually get coverage? Because it's essentially our fault, collectively, humanity's collective fault, that we're in a difficult position. We've been fossil fuels.
So climate-related losses. Insurers have been facing more and more climate-related losses, and long term we see that's one of the things that's going to drive the insurance market back into its the hard cycle again. So that's certainly something that insurers are interested in. Earthquakes, the predominant peril, driving losses in Wellington. However, in terms of climate, I mean, insurers may step further and further away from different climate-related losses if they continue to increase in frequency, and that's where a captive might provide some flexibility in being able to finance that sort of loss.
And so then the supplementary question to that is, but the captive is not going to be big enough to offset those losses, which could be, run into the trillions globally, right?
The captive would have a certain amount of capacity depending on its size, and that's what it could cover. But that means you can provide some pressure towards the insurance placement. It gives you some additional negotiation strength there.
Thank you, Anna. Any other questions? I was trying to look at my entry point into this one, Sarah. So the report well sets out the end game and the value potential of a captive. And by the way, that convinces me to recognise phase 2 as needed, partly because I want to see the numbers stacked together. I just want to reflect for my committee members, if you go to page 25 of our agenda, Matt and team have well put out the key considerations. So I think the issue here, and I don't want to overstate it because I think you've dealt with it to some extent, is that while conceptually the end point makes a lot of sense, there's a few transition issues of getting there that are the hurdles, and which talks about the vulnerability and the heightened risk, which actually should be something that we should be, as a committee, very interested in. So it struck me that the 3 points that are made under that key consideration section are the ones which I make some assumption you've turned your mind to. And so it is that level of vulnerability as you move to build a fund that is sustainable. In short, you might get hit by a catastrophe, or rather a seismic event, in which case you'd have to, before that we have to think through, I think your point about reinsurance, is there something we have to do that enables the setting up of the captive but also keeps us protected should the big one occur, correct?
Yeah, and I think probably I might let Matt jump in, given it was his report, but from a Treasury lens, if you like, because that's traditionally where I come from, you yes, you go into these things aware of the risk, but you also will put in mitigations. And so that offsetting of the risk, it will take longer to obviously grow that capital if you're buying insurance out the back end, but you're not accepting all of that risk, and you sort of risk weight that to risk tolerance levels or sort of wherever we sit around this table. But in setting this up, we would rely on good governance within the structure to make sure that they are very cognizant of our requirements in setting up this vehicle. And what I mean by that is we have to, I'm looking for Matt to maybe nod, but I believe we have to put one board member in, but it's domiciled in whichever domicile it is. And these things are set up, these captive insurance companies are set up all the time for the similar purposes to what we are trying to achieve. So therefore, the capability and the knowledge and understanding about how these vehicles are run and risk managed are very much the bread and butter of the people that we would be looking to partner with to set these up. So, Matt, is that a fair comment for me to make?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the known vulnerability, and so that at a strategic and tactical level, that sort of nuance would be fleshed out in phase 2.
Risk first for everything around here, Bruce. You know how I operate. So.
Sorry, it's not a criticism.
No.
I'm just saying that I'm always interested. It's no different to what you've had to think through, I'm sure, with Wellington, well, not Wellington, whatever we call the new entity. Sorry, I can't use Wellington Water. The transition issues can be the things that trip you up in terms of seeing that far. This puts it to us here, which is great.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It seems to me quite mitigable. That's a terrible word. I won't try and use that again. You can mitigate it, but I just think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And that would be part of the process that would go. Okay. Thank you. I've had my chance. Tim and then Tony.
Just a very small question also about the captive, is that I noticed that the council, the group spends about $900,000, which isn't covered by the council itself, which I presume is council-controlled organisations' insurance costs. Well, I mean, I realise the limitations on the captive in terms of being able to provide insurance for other parties because of regulation. But would you be able to actually consolidate insurance under the captive for the, you would? Okay.
Yes, so our CCOs as part of the council group, so think of it as a subsidiary of, we can stretch it out to there, but not to arm's length individuals. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great option for the cable car, etc., who really struggle to insure their rolling stock. We'll be able to help them out through the captive on that, get some good outcomes.
Thank you, Tim. Tony.
Just following up on Tim, you talk about the CCOs. Is there a limitation? Because, for example, we don't own all of the stadium. So is this we're really talking about being able to do it for 100% owned?
100% owned, yes.
But the others are.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate extending it to the stadium given the structure of that entity, and it's not quite arm's length, but it's not within the group.
Yeah, it's all care and no responsibility. Yeah. The second question is just a straight. And I know it's still a bit early. I appreciate all of the analysis and the direction you're going, and I thank you for all the work. In terms of a straight cash flow view, if we are going to go into this entity, there's a period of time which, if we're going to keep things covered, we're going to have to spend more money, and that's partly to do coverage insurance and that sort of stuff. Is there a cash flow estimate about what we're looking at? We're looking at $1 million a year for 5 years or something like that. Have you got any idea of that, or is that still too early?
We could possibly come back early doors if we're doing phase 2. I don't have those numbers to hand, Matt, but we could get some anecdotal evidence. So New Zealand Post have literally just done theirs in the last 12 months, so they could give us a steer. The main cost drivers are going to be largely the accountants, the lawyers, and the auditors within the domicile that keep us safe within wherever we choose to do that. And depending on where you do it, I'm really speaking off the cuff now, but there's sort of incentives from different domiciles to sort of in that they will pay some of those costs for us if that's where we choose to go. But I won't commit to any dollar values at the moment, Matt, unless you have a more robust answer than that. We're not talking in the tens of millions, Tony.
No, I hope not, because it's not going to happen then.
Yeah. Establishment costs.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
you, Tony. Iona. Iona.
Presumably, if we build in more resilience into our communities and our infrastructure, that will help with the insurance too?
It all helps with the big picture, yes. Every time we go to London, every time we do new modelling, we're taking into account the work that's done on our asset portfolio, mostly in resilience, but the work that Andy's doing in the climate change team, it all adds to our knowledge and understanding of how our assets may or may not perform in whether it be a seismic event or future climate change. This is more when we're buying traditional insurance, the more we can demonstrate our knowledge and understanding of our assets, the better response we get back from the market, because it saves them doing modelling, because they all have models of their own, but they don't have the in-depth detail of the asset by asset, or however we sort of cut and slice that. So we've got this deterministic modelling piece coming through on the roadmap next. We've already done our building data and things like that. So that's a different part of the insurance roadmap, but it all informs into how we would structure up the captive. Long story short, the better informed we are and we can go and buy that insurance off the market, the better, more confidence they have in us. And especially working with this new brokering team in London, they've given us really good bang for buck.
Okay, thanks. And Matt, sorry, just going back to my questions before. I mean, is the insurance industry really doing some hard thinking about change? Because it was set up in a time when climate change wasn't an issue. Like, how's it actually going to be affordable to pay? Like, so if there's more than one wildfire in a year, like as in the report, how will it be affordable over the medium to long term without some disruption?
Yeah, I mean, my view on this is that insurers are taking this into account in terms of their portfolios and who they insure, and you're seeing the sort of losses reflected in the costs, and eventually, if those costs become prohibitive, then it's essentially an insurer withdrawal from certain exposures if they continue to increase. I'm not sure if there's another angle you'd want to explore on that question.
I think at this stage, John, if it's okay, we'll leave that there. It's a really important point, though, that actually there may be limited in the long run, depending on change, and you're indicating the strength of the change, it may well change these events.
I think just one thing, if I could point you towards the Premiums Under Pressure report by Helen Clark Foundation and WSP, provides a lot of guidance on kind of the interventions that may be required in future.
Can I ask one final question from me about the report, please, Sarah? And I'm looking at page 37, which has the summary of the key findings of the work that you've done. I was interested in the infrastructure coverage presents the strongest short-term retention opportunity, which essentially is the fact that at the moment, if I understand it correctly, for the next year or less now, we have the it's not underwater, Freudian slip, the underground assets that will go, and above ground assets that will go to Metro Water. Is that a qualifier on the benefits from this process? It was slightly unclear to me whether once they have gone, the value of the captive diminishes.
I apologise. I was actually supposed to mention that in my opening statements. We did find that a little bit of a curly one as we sort of received back the modelling, and that presents the best opportunity. What we've tried to articulate in our paper as a response to that, obviously we're working very closely with our regional entity on the water. I don't believe they will have the time to fit something like this into their establishment phase. But similar to the problem solved by Transpower when they set up their captive to meet the needs of their slightly different network, but network nonetheless. The real opportunity for the sector actually exists in those water entities. Watercare is looking at setting one of these up in earnest. We've had conversations with them about how they might structure that up. They have the benefit of John Bishop, who's their treasurer. He actually set up the Transpower one, so it's all a bit cyclical. But look, I think that the position remains for us that we will have a significant asset portfolio remaining, but also being mindful of the liability risk that will may or may not eventuate in something that we simply haven't anticipated and insurance won't cover. So that's probably where the benefit will grow, but also our insurance gap will not be closed just because our assets go away. So we will be left with this insurance gap problem, and this remains a hopeful solution to closing again some of that gap.
It might be then, it's probably the only quick comment I'd have about it being draft is you may want, that's really helpful because I read that and I was trying to work out what seemed to be a significant qualifier with the rest of the findings, which
like
seemed
I
to
said,
be
apologies, I wanted to put that up front.
No, look, no worries, don't have to apologise. I'm just reflecting that this is going to be the record on which we are recommending we go to phase 2. I'd like that one just the comment around the qualification on what appears to be the qualification would be good to have.
So bring it from our report effectively into the AO.
Yeah.
Matt, you
I
got
think
that,
that's right. Brilliant. Okay.
Awesome, thanks.
Folk, I haven't got anybody else wanting to ask questions at this point. I wonder then if we could move to so firstly, thank you for that. I wonder if we could move to the resolutions, please, which just to reflect it is to obviously receive the report. We've talked at length about the update on 31 May renewals, thank you. And we note the progress on their roadmap, which effectively we've done, and we receive the feasibility report. And this is the important one in some senses. Centre 1, we endorse officers beginning work on phase 2 of the captive feasibility study. Do I have a person prepared to move that? Thank you, Tony. Do I have a seconder? I'm happy to second that. Is there any discussion on the motion? There being none, can you take your remotes, please, and vote? Victoria? That's carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you guys for that. And Matt, appreciate that. With some significant phase to get to in terms of our insurance roadmap, which is such, it's great to have that there and know the direction we're going in. So all the best. Sorry, Sarah, how long does phase 2 take? I didn't ask that question. Matt, are you able to tell me how long phase 2 takes?
Oh, we would need to determine the time frame when we're scoping it up, Bruce. But
okay. Yeah. Well, we've moved past the item, so somewhere, Sarah, you might be able to tell us. I'd be interested to know how long phase 2 would take, given there's some suggestion that we should take advantage of the soft market. So, and that's assuming that we would agree to phase 2. Thank you. I wonder if we can move to the insurance update, please. So, probably Jan and Murray, it'd be great to have you here, please. Thank you. Now, Jana, Murray, this is a bit of an omnibus report, and in some sense it would be good to break it up. But why don't we hear from you, present your paper, and then we'll see if we can work our way. It'll be my role to work us way through the various items that you actually have in front of us. So, in your hands, please.
Okay. Good morning. Yes, so the paper we bring to you today, as you said, Bruce, is a bit of an omnibus, so a bit of an all-in-one insurance update covering results from last financial year, progress on the current work program, but also general assurance items like protected disclosure updates and follow-up on recommendations, as well as some committee-specific items like the assessment. So you will see a couple of key themes coming through in that paper, things like the assurance focus remaining on strengthening internal controls, improving oversight, and embedding consistent practices. And that's what we are bringing to you today in a nutshell.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Murray, while, as I said, we'll try and get through the papers. In terms of your reports that are tabled here, is there any matter that you would want to raise?
I'd firstly like to apologise for having them all turn up at once, Chair. It was intended to go more gradually over the year, which is something we're intending to do this year. I'm quite happy to talk very quickly through the high-level findings across the
I
internal
think-
audits.
Go for it, Murray.
Okay, thank you. We've got 5 reports in here, and they vary across the various topical areas and what we're doing. So each internal audit looks at the process and looks at a sample of transactions or items in that process to make sure 2 things. One is those individual items are correct, but more importantly, what that means about the process. So if we look at earthquake-prone buildings, the really good news is they're in 2 parts of the organisation are responsible for earthquake-prone buildings, and both are doing a very good job. What we're saying is at the ELT and council level, there's not the single point of visibility. So there's a lack of pulling together the data and saying, here's where you're up to across all your portfolio. So our suggestion or recommendation is that they provide that visibility across the whole portfolio rather than breaking it out into 2 portfolios, because it's the same issue across both. Business continuity planning, similar sorts of issues in terms of there's something like, I think, 17 business continuity plans across the organisation, but as a decentralised process, the challenge is keeping consistent process across all of those. So we've got a series of recommendations which go through the basics in terms of keeping your plan up to date, testing the plan, putting training in place, and it's one of a number of reports should be coming through to the committee, which is looking at how do we make sure in a decentralised process that we're keeping a consistency across those processes. If we look at alcohol licensing, again, very well controlled area. A couple of very minor points. One was where we've got risk decision making at low levels. Particular incident for every alcohol licence, as you're probably aware, the viewpoint of Health NZ and police and I think another agency are sought each time. It's quite a pressured environment in terms of timeline, so the decision was made, if we don't hear back, we'll take that as no objection. That's a risk decision made kind of by the people doing the job, which is fine, but I think it's a decision that should be made further up the chain. So it's really just saying let's push that decision up. If the council's comfortable with that, carry on. The only other thing we had is in terms of their cover sheets that I guess manage the process, there's just some tidying up that you've done to make the process more effective. Road corridor management, this one was slightly different. The timing was such that the RFP was going to market just at the time of the audit. So what we looked at was what were the assurance inputs and what were the requirements that had to be reflected in the RFP. So making sure that the RFP process would address any assurance problems and also would pick up any legal requirements quite happily. So there's a Section 17A requirement which was built in. So the only thing we found was that there's a process within the road corridor team called OFI, opportunities for improvement. This is effectively a database of where improvements could be made to the relationship and the way work's done. We thought they should have had a formal process of saying, well, what are the themes coming out of this? What are the things we build into the RFP process? And I guess more importantly, the contract going forward. The mitigation is the team who are involved with the OFI process are the same team who did the RFP. So they kind of intuitively knew these things, but we were really suggesting that there's a potential opportunity missed there. Sensitive expenditure is the final report we're putting forward now. The way we're doing this is over time. Sensitive expenditure, as you'd imagine, there's literally thousands of transactions because they're the $5 transaction, the $10 transaction, et cetera, So what we're trying to do over time is see if we can see from the stats coming out that the behaviours are improving. So as I kind of expected, what we found was that a couple of things were happening. One is this was an admin process, so people weren't taken as seriously as they should in terms of policy compliance, in my internal auditor's perspective. And the second thing was there was just a kind of lack of understanding of the detail of the policy. For example, if there's an event, the requirement in the policy is that the authoriser doesn't attend the event. But again, when it's a team having coffee or something like that, if that was an example, then the manager of that team is part of that team, so goes along and then approves it. So that is a breach of policy in theory, but it's kind of pretty low level in terms of that. So it's really just that improvement of understanding and getting those behaviours right. The only other thing I'd say is that there's a lot of kind of documentation which we had to scurry around or get them to scurry around to find rather than having embedded process. So it needs a tidy up as compared to presenting a problem in my perspective. So I'm happy to take any questions on those reports.
No, look, thank you, Murray. And I mean, it's one of within the paper we also have a review of the committee. It's one of my joys is that in this latter phase of the triennium we have now got this work happening. It sometimes is at what appears to be the low detail, but it's actually the assurance that we need. So I'm very grateful that we've had those reports. So Iona, you've got first question.
Can I just ask that there is silence in the gallery, because it's just a bit distracting. People can go somewhere to another room if that's all right. So there's a few questions. The earthquake stuff I'm a little bit surprised by, that why that hadn't been picked up earlier, that there wasn't this overall view, because there was supposed to be.
Good question. I can't actually answer for management, but what I can point out is you have a property team who manage the big assets, and you have the PSR, which own, have things like there's a shed in Botanic Gardens, and that's one of their earthquake-prone buildings. So they're managing very well the earthquake-prone buildings in their portfolio. There has been one, omnibus report done, which came up through ELT to the council, but we were looking at that and saying, well, that actually is quite valuable information. The risk is relatively low since the deadline for earthquake buildings wasn't extended by 4 years, but it's more ensuring that the executive leadership team and the council have that visibility of what's happening across the portfolio, rather than at the minute you have the reporting effectively in the two silos rather than together.
Okay, and the same for BCP, that will be taken seriously, because that's a little bit worrying.
Yes, sorry, I
just given we know that there will be more.
If I can just respond to that, thank you. The new chief executive has made it very clear to ELT that they own these issues, and I think that's very positive, because it's no longer, and I think part of the reason for some of his reports taking a bit longer is that there's a review process going through internally, but we have a commitment across these things from effectively Matt and the executive leadership team that these actions are going to happen. The BCP one, I think all the actions are due to be completed by 2026, which is a good time frame, because they're quite big actions in terms of testing and in terms of training. So I believe they're taken seriously, yes.
And just for public confidence, around the significant service contracts, there's no danger that we're overpaying or they're insecure?
We didn't see any evidence of that. So again, it's the issues we've identified are process issues in terms of managing your risk, as compared to, we didn't identify any examples of where we had really bad practice or kind of on the individual contract there's a problem. It's more saying the process is put there or should be put there to make sure those risks are managed, but there's no examples within that sample.
Okay, thanks. I've got two more questions, so can I go back on the list?
Perhaps I could let other people have I think we've got you. Tony.
Yes, I just want to have an interest in the road corridor management side of things, and it's unfortunate about the timing of what you could cover and not cover due to the contract renewals process. Really, I wanted, I just do get as a councillor, repeated comments about some poor quality outcomes on the road management, and I even talked to contractors, and because of some of the material that they use with a seal and that sort of stuff, that's been changing in New Zealand as well. So I was just wondering, when would you get around to re-looking at that side of things under the current program?
To answer truthfully, I'm not sure. So the process we'll go through is at the end of the calendar year, we'll start the process of working through what the next year's program, the subsequent programs are. We have the road corridor contract going out, and also we have another contract around, or RFP around payroll systems. So again, the timing and where we come across those, there's a number of things that be done. One is you can look at, which is probably more applicable, payroll, what controls are intended to be put in place. Sorry, I'm spitting at that. And then you can say, once it's in place, then what's working, what's not. Now, the process around road corridor management, one of the things in the contract was there's quite a lot of work around how they make improvements, make cost savings across the contract itself in terms of the work being done. So they'd kind of hard bake that into the expectations of the contractors. So that was a positive from my perspective. But the process we'll go through is we'll come up with a kind of long list. We'll work that through with management, what they believe is the priorities for the next year. That will come back to the committee to make the final determination. And at that point, based on a number of factors, including risk and kind of what's happening in the organisation, then that may well come into the picture. Or you might say that actually, we're probably in transition period for the road corridor contract, so it might be pushed out a year. But it will be a management and committee decision.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the probably the next point in time for that sort of discussion, Tony, will be next June, which is the natural cycle at the end of a year's program. Okay, Iona, you had some more questions.
Yeah, paragraph 27 around the disclosures. I just, like when someone says there's been no substantiation of serious wrongdoing, look, that may well be true, but how do we know that that's true? Because sometimes people do make complaints and then nothing happens.
Yes, so we do have a process for complaints being made, and that process requires us to, and that's also based on the legislation. So we are required within a statutory time frame of 20 days to acknowledge a complaint in the first place and to also sort of come up with a plan as to what are we going to do about it. And that's the process that we follow, and we would go on about with the methodology around, you get presented a concern, and the approach would always be to validate that concern and to see how come and what's behind that concern. So what's the information I can get, basically.
Is there a right of appeal?
Well, you would always go back to the complainant and say, this is what we found.
Yeah. And then
what
if they're
are your
unhappy,
thoughts?
if they're unhappy with the outcome?
Yeah, then it's about, okay, so what is it that keeps you unhappy? Because there is a difference between, you missed a piece of information, or I'm not happy because it doesn't, corroborate what I thought. But if there is a piece of information that's been missed and that's being brought forward, then that's obviously something we need to consider before we conclude.
Okay. And just the last one, look, obviously it's a question for the new council, but I do think the committee of a whole around some of this stuff, maybe this is for you, Bruce, actually. I think it does have some merit. I am uncomfortable some of the content that we discuss, and I think I've made this point before, as have others, should actually be given to the whole of the council. So is that going to come through some
If I could make a comment,
recommendation?
That was actually my comments. So thank you for reading them. I, as I've sat here as chair for the Tronium, I have been conscious that there has been desire for full council to hear some of this. One option, I'm not necessarily recommending it, I'm saying it's something that could be considered. This is a committee of the whole. I must confess, who needs another meeting from all councillors' perspective, but that is one option. It's one which, quite frankly, I manage elsewhere, where we have a number of councils where they have a committee of the whole for the risk committee, which is a possibility. I think the point I would make there, Iona, is that whichever way the new council chooses to swing this, there is a communication gap between this committee and council. That's my honest assessment, and I think we should look at some way in improving that. I reviewed the performance of Queenstown Lakes District Council, actually, at the start of the year. Their chair is required to report to the next full council after each committee meeting, for instance, which is one way of ensuring that key matters are taken up to council. Yesterday I was speaking with Waipa District because we have a 6-monthly engagement between the committee chair and indeed council. So that point is really around good communication about the work of the committee and full council. There's a couple of options there that I've put there, so thank you for noting that, because I think it's probably one of the biggest issues, or one of the biggest improvements we could bring to the committee.
Are we able to make a recommendation around that? I know it's tricky because it is a governance issue, but I think even just having a formal report back sounds like a practical thing to do.
What sort of
So it just
wording
says
would you like to
receive
have?
the information. I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate just to, well, look, the mayor's here, obviously, but just that our thinking would be that maybe a bit of thought goes into looking at how that link between the audit and risk and the rest of the council could be considered, just keeping it really broad.
I'm reasonably relaxed, Iona. I will want to, before the end of the triennium, of course there's too fewer days, isn't there? What is it, 14, Tori? I think you said before. 15. I wanted to test this report, and I'm conscious that there is a broader, it's not just my views. We've got a broader suite of views here, because I as chair would like to pick this up with particularly Matt, so that in fact it is clear that we have done yet again a good self-assessment, and actually we're asking him to take into account what this shows as he works to recommend to the new council what should happen. So that will happen, if that's any assurance to you. Any other questions or comments folk would like to raise? Cracker. Sorry, Tony. Yeah.
You guys have, hit the ground running, it seems. I just wondered if you could use this opportunity, even though it's in public, just to make any comments from you as coming into the council about your experience of working as internal auditors across the teams, and how well do you think it's going compared to the way you thought it would go?
I'm happy to make some comments. My first comment was, I guess I was surprised how few people knew what we were doing and why we were doing it to start with. What is really pleasing is post that, every time we managed to get engagement, it was really good. People were really positive about it and really, very happy for us to be there and took our work seriously, which was great. We have also been given the opportunity to present to ELT in terms of what we do, how we do it, and where their role sits across the internal audit process. So that's been very good. And the feeling I had coming for that meeting is that the process is taken seriously, and there's quite a lot of focus on making sure that the issues identified at the systemic sort of process level are taken very seriously, and the kind of responsibility for making sure remediation is done is again something in which ELT are working within themselves in terms of holding each other accountable.
Okay, thanks for those comments.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that. That's a very interesting question. I'm glad to hear that. Murray, that's superb, and I think it is, and again, I appreciate your question in public, Tony. I think it actually is, it just shows the merit of what we've been able to achieve through both your position, Yana, and also, Murray, your work, that actually we've got something here which appears to be valued inside the organisation. That's what you're really saying, but now we're starting to see the report, so I think that's what you're reflecting as well, Tony. It's good to come up. Tim, you had a comment.
This is again a question which might be relevant for the next guys. If councillors around this table in a month's time decide that they want assurance reports, especially on particular areas, what capacity do they have to, sort of feed through the management system to actually get their preferences represented by what the work is actually done? I'm thinking about contracting and stuff like that.
Well, I think this is a reasonable venue for that discussion to be had, and a recommendation made to management. It's a matter of working with management, I think, on what that is. But I do believe, and in fact, Murray, I don't know about, I mean, it's not about discussing your contract details, but I think when I first was involved in meeting with Murray and Jana's predecessor, I can't remember, John, it was actually a recommendation that in terms of allocating work for Murray, there is a level of free float, what I call free float, in other words, unallocated time and budget. For two reasons. One, management may have good need, and I was thinking that RFP work that you've done, Murray, is really good because it's actually using both risk and assurance at the right time when some, significant procurements may well be made. But actually, I also reflect that a risk committee has an ability to also consider, or indeed full council has an ability to consider other areas where the internal auditor could be deployed. It would have to be a one-off specific request, but I think I would, if I'm here in a month's time, I would entertain that sort of view.
Can I just... Presumably, we would have had that opportunity when we signed off the schedule.
Oh, that's right. I think what I'm reflecting, Rebecca, is that 365 days is a week's a long time in politics. It may well be that from time to time there are matters that come up, and that's really all. I think that's probably what Tim's getting at too. From time to time, there are matters that we need to deploy our internal audit resource. We shouldn't be scared to change our program. Yeah. Thank you. Rightio, appreciate that. So look, can we go to the motions, please, which is essentially that we will receive the information. Do I have a person prepared to move that? Thanks, Tony. Seconder? I'll second that. Oh, thank you, Anna. I'd rather have somebody different than me. Is there any discussion on that motion? There being none, can you take your remotes, please, and vote? I don't know why I'm holding the remote closer. I'm making that's. That's got to go that way. It's an old age thing, Rebecca. I'm going donk donk donk, trying to make it work. So there we go. Rightio, thank you. It's carried. Right, this point that I recommended or I indicated that we would change the order of the meeting, and I now propose that we move into public excluded. It's for the purposes that we can meet both with our external auditor and indeed our internal auditors without staff present. So I'm going to put that motion. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, John. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, sorry. And go that way. Brilliant. Thank you. So we will move, and you'll let us know when in public. question. If you could just confirm that, please, Letitia. Come on up, you guys, straight away, please. You're in the hot seat. Wendy, Alice, great to have you here. So look, you're our final and welcome substantive item this morning, which is obviously the health and safety report. So between the two of you, I'll let you take us through it as you deem fit, and then I'll open it up to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Alice and I will take the paper as read. The only thing I wanted to touch on was and expand on was the recent ACC audit that took place. While previous audits we have, passed, and this audit again we passed, it was a completely new audit framework, and it's aligned to the ISO 45001 framework. So the audit result and recommendations have been demonstrating that we are focusing on the right things. Our projects are well aligned, and projects such as the safety management system review, or the documentation review, have all helped contribute to where we are now. And the audit recommendations will be integrated into our normal work plan going forward. So we're really obviously happy with that result, and where we are tracking at the moment. So we're happy to take any questions in relation to the paper.
So to always acknowledge good news. We pass a test like the ACC one, that's great news, and I'm sure a credit particularly to the work that you folk do. Yes, Iona.
I'll be pleased to know I don't have many questions, so that means it's all good. I was just wanting to ask about paragraph 32 around the violence and aggression. Are you talking about people yelling at people in people's face, or are you actually talking about physical contact as well? And is anyone actually at serious risk just due to the slow increase?
Yeah, so that was part of the reason we did the second subcategory. So for an example of what would be the antisocial behaviour, this may be close contact you're witnessing, maybe an argument in front of you, you may be involved somehow, like in a front-facing role. But yeah, the violence and aggression definitely is a verbal aggression to staff, swearing at staff, and some will be physical altercations, and some are physical.
Are they reaching the bar of criminal behaviour? So the police would be involved if someone is... Yeah. Okay, and I mean, are you worried that someone is at serious risk of being injured or even worse?
Yeah, I think there's obviously always that concern, and the systems and processes that we have in place, we're trying to mitigate that, and allowing staff, to obviously assess the situation as early as possible and remove themselves from the seriousness of what could be. And in part, the staff are doing that. It's when it escalates quickly that we're having real issues, and that's what we're seeing with some of the reporting that's coming through. So it's continued work in that space, and like we have been talking, it's like other areas that's happening across nationally as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Iona. Do we have any other questions? Perhaps if I just followed through on that one, Wendy, and I'm just looking at and I've got three questions. They're all really about just understanding definitions. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at page 80. So you've got critical risks, and you say the severity, the actual severity, and there were three at severe. Can you just characterise for me what does severe mean, or what's it defined as? I might have missed the beat. But what we categorise something as severe? It means what?
So the assessments are based on the assessments made by our business partners, and answering the 5x5 matrix and likelihood. Types of things you would see with severe include, for example, a parking officer would have something thrown at them. Quite sad things. So yeah.
I'll just
jump in if you don't mind, Chair?
Yeah, sure.
And poor Alice is also suffering from jet lag. She's just come back from the UK.
Okay, all right.
Even though she's amazing. So the just for the 5x5, if that's a bit of a jargon kind of for you, it's kind of the likelihood and the potential outcome that could have happened. So severe is at the highest rating, and it's something obviously we're taking incredibly seriously. But so it is jargon, but we can put something in going forward about what does that mean, or spend a session on what that matrix looks like, that 5x5 matrix.
Yeah. When things are characterised as severe as well, it also prompts a more thorough investigation as well on the later end.
Yeah, and I think, look, it's I'm comfortable with your categorisation. I mean, to understand a bit more, no big drama, Alice. Yep. I'm just. Clearly from our perspective, and I know it's from your perspective too, it's not just incidences, but it's not the quality, but the nature of them. In other words, the severity, and therefore are we as an organisation having the right response is the sort of thing, and indeed do you need support from us around that becomes relevant. One of the other questions I had, which is right back up under paragraph 10, I was just trying to work through things. We have Well New Zealand as a third-party administrator for injury management. Yeah. Now, I'm ignorant, so can you just indicate what do they do? Because you do mention it further down the track that we have them involved.
Yeah. So Well NZ are specialists in injury management. They take the claim, so the claims are lodged on the council's end within My Safety. Anything that's got an injury attached will automatically be notified to Well NZ, so they've got access to that side of our system only. And they are people who can refer to clinics within Wellington. They've got connections with physiotherapists, doctors, GPs, that kind of thing, and they can have that. The specialists that they get in touch with also have that degree of knowledge within healthcare to be able to provide that advice also.
So we have them engaged to enable our staff to navigate through their injury.
Yeah, they're effectively our third-party administrator, so they do that on our behalf.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I have regular meetings with Well NZ, so they can run through exactly what's happening line by line with each case and where it's up to.
Great. Meredith.
I don't know if you recall, Chair, but the legislation changed a while ago around ACC that you could contract in a third party as an alternative to ACC, and that's what Well NZ is.
Okay, rightio. Thank you. Look, and the other question I had, sorry, that'll be my final one, was just under paragraph 37, obviously always concerned, I can underestimate mental health and well-being. Where we say work-related referrals have decreased, again, I'm just looking to check the words, is that where management would refer people to approach the EAP services, or is that just self-referral, or both?
Yeah, very fair question. This is inbound when they are being the first meeting with TELUS. So this is TELUS's categorisation, and it is the primary reason they're there, and they will ask that straight up. Is it because of work? Is it personal? And this is the staff member saying it's work related. It's not a manager referral.
Got you. I understand that. So again, question, we take percentages of what they're worth. It's moving in the right direction. That it's a lot of other factors that are affecting people, and it's great to have that service there. Okay, thank you for that. So look, Iona, and then Laurie's online after that. Iona.
Sorry, just occurred to me, Meredith, you might want to pop in here. I saw something vaguely in the news about, I think it was the police had released guidelines around mass events, adverse, violent events. Just given what's been going on in the world, and given local government controls public spaces, I was just wondering if you had looked at that. I'm sorry, that it just occurred to me now, so I don't know the name of the report.
From the looks on Wendy and Alice's face, I will be taking this question. So thanks for that, Councillor. That sits under the security aspect, which falls in city safety and customer and community. So from a health and safety perspective, we're focused on the internal aspects and how we might look after our staff and our public in the facilities that we have. So security will be looking at that. We have a strategic a steering group for security risk, and we prescribe to the Public Services Protection Security Requirements Framework. We're one of the first councils, or we are the first council in New Zealand to do so. And so we have been lifting our maturity around security, both what you're referring to and all the other types of security like cyber security, personnel and information security, etc. So we have a good relationship with central government, and as it stands under city safety, where security is now located, because I think you might recall it used to be in health and safety, that it's no longer there. That they have good contacts with central government and have the ability to be able to get guidance when there is a potential threat and how we might respond. And we are continuing to strengthen our security maturity holistically as well.
So, in other words, if someone comes into one of our libraries with a knife, we have got some protocols to deal with that, whether it's staff or the public. I mean, just go.
Yeah, 100%.
But I'd also take on Meredith's point that there is a security aspect and public safety aspect, which is under security arrangements. There's the health and safety issues of where staff are threatened with perhaps somebody coming in with a knife or whatever, so they're related. It is actually something which some other committees under the health, not the health and safety banner, but related, is sometimes a briefing around the security arrangements, which may be something for the new committee. Laurie, welcome to the meeting. I know you've been here for a while, so you've got a question for Wendy and Alice or Meredith.
Yeah, it won't be any surprises, just on the personal confrontation, and thank you for putting in that new section. I think that will be really helpful. I guess what is a way, because it feels like this has become that BAU, and I guess I'm coming from a position of not wanting to accept that. And so I guess do we have points in the year where we will look at how we will work across with other councils nationally to troubleshoot how they, are dealing with it? Just what processes can we put in place to help elevate the information, or know that we're doing something toward stopping it or having a special focus? Yeah, what opportunities have we got there?
Yeah, I think this will feed really well into the critical risk review. So with the critical risk review, one of the outputs of that will be really doing deep dives into all the controls we've got for the risk. So every single control we've got across the council to do with personal confrontation, one being body-worn cameras, another one being escalation training, de-escalation training. So we'll be pulling all the people in the room together who have an interconnected point with personal confrontation. How do you manage it? What's working for you? So all that will be happening within the next year, which I think will really help. Another thing is the strengthening of the contact with the police, which I think has been really helpful, especially through the city safety development and the plan there. Strengthening those communication lines with the police is ongoing. And another is just the messaging, the comms. You might remember from a few years ago, there was a Wellington City Council comms campaign that we did about being kind to frontline staff. So even though the numbers are alarming, and I see what you're saying with the BAU, it is every paper, it's, it is still our biggest risk, reported risk. But keep reporting on it and telling that story out there to other people, and hopefully have that empathy come through as a response.
Thank you for the question, Laurie. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
comment, Laurie?
I guess some feedback would be I would like to see either an annual really strong look at report back and actions alongside the new level we're taking this to. And it might be we've had another condensed look and we don't think we can do anything, but just that's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're more than happy to provide that. I think, as Alice said, the critical review that we're currently undertaking, we're currently writing up our profiles for that those critical risks. That'll be a starting point, and we will bring that back to this committee. And then I think just getting those that feedback from the frontline staff around those controls is really key, like actually understanding from them what they believe are some of those risks and the controls that we can put in place. You know, there's obviously a lot of frontline services that council have in place, so yeah, getting our head around all of this and reporting back, we can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. And I do appreciate your question. It's always a concern of mine. I think I might have asked a similar question around mental health. We can sometimes normalise the position we put our staff in, so we're keen to support you guys as far as that's concerned. Any other questions or comments for the team here? Look, there aren't any, and just before we go to the motion, again, end of a training, Wendy, you've been with us for the whole, and Meredith, you've been with us the whole course. Alice, you're you're new to the team, but you've been a tremendous addition to our team's effort this traineum. So thank you for all your work. This started with a action plan and a business plan to get things going, and it's great to see that we're into such a good arrangement. So thank you, Wendy and Alice. And also, Meredith, appreciate your efforts. Can we move to the motion, please, which is that I think if I call it rightly, we receive the report. I'm going to move it. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, John. Can we please vote? Great.
Sorry, Bruce. Was there a debate?
We need a debate?
Well, I just want.
Sorry, I didn't realise there needed to be a debate on this one. Okay.
Well, the only thing I wanted to raise, and I have raised it previously, I thought this was going to be referred through to council. I know it's being dealt with at the audit and risk, but I couldn't find my notes, but I do recall a conversation that we've had previously to ensure that all council are aware of what's in the reports, and it would be referred up.
What information goes from this committee to council? Nothing. I'm sort of asking anybody and everybody.
So only information specifically referred up to council, or information which this committee recommends but does not have the delegated authority to fully approve, such as the annual report.
Yeah.
For example, we pass that on to the long-term plan committee, which itself then goes on to the council. So those are the only two things. So if we want to recommend something, Councillor Calvert's quite right, we would need to amend the motion that we've passed. So I'm not sure whether you as chair, with the leave of the meeting, wishes to set aside the current vote and try again.
Look, I'm just not trying to be difficult here, but and if you want to not do it, but this has been a conversation I think we've had in the past, just to ensure that the whole council is aware of all the health and safety matters. I know this matter is delegated, but it's something that the whole, as officers under the Health and Safety Act, I think it's something that we should be aware of what audit and risk have discussed, even if so much as they've accepted the report and there are no follow-up actions or whatever. But I just would like, even for the next triennium, some formal note that the broader council needs to be aware of it.
Yeah, look. Meredith.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Calvert. And I know what you're referring to because that's how we did it in the previous triennium, something that we can suggest to the new council about that, but there is still an overarching responsibility of all of council around health and safety, and that is also through the verification of health and safety observations that everyone partakes, not just this committee, and there is still the availability of this report should they wish to read it, but we will take that on board and note it for the next triennium.
Diane, there's also, when we were briefly looking through the assurance report, the one thing we focused on what was the quality and extent of communication between this committee and full council, and we agreed that that's a matter that actually needs to be looked at in the new triennium, including, and I would agree with you entirely actually, matters around health and safety, given everybody has a level of officer responsibility. Thank you for that, Diane. Sorry, I wasn't trying to be too quick. We seem to be not in a debating mood today, which I'm appreciative of. So if I cut you off, my apologies. Can we move then, please, to the final item, which is the decision register? Which increasingly I read for some reason, Letitia, to make certain that we're all fine. Firstly, we know we have a workshop on the Monday. Is it Monday? No, Monday? It is Monday. Why am I worried about Monday? I am worried about Monday. Anyway, we've got a workshop on Monday. And the second is when we will formally meet to consider recommending the adoption of the accounts. So that's there. In terms of decisions being made, we are on the whole okay, Letitia, in terms of the count there. And indeed, you've got there the list of matters which currently are on that meeting on the 2nd, which has one or two additional items that was needed because of the timing, which I think it relates to the update on the Crown Observer's report. That's really it. We have a brief litigation report coming, but that's only in relationship really to the annual report for the need to look at the letter of representation. Okay, with that, I think that's all we need to do other than have the motion that we receive this information. Thank you, Tony. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Iona. Would you please take your remotes and vote? Surely not, Tony. Yeah, actually, I would like to, yeah. Okay. Well, look, that's got us to the end of the meeting, which I don't think there's anything else we need to be discussing. I was smart in my chairmanship because I kept it going till lunch arrived. So that means we do need to stop. So look, would you join me, please, with the closing karakia? Unahia, unahia, unahia kei te uru tapanui, ke watea, kia mama, kia nako, kia tinana, kia wairoa, i te ara takatu, koia e te rong. Kia watea, a e rā, rua. Thank you very much. That's the end of the.